Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another AP Human Geography video. I am Mr. Latimer,
And I'm Dr. Scoggins.
and today we're going to learn about skill 2.4, which is population dynamics. But before we do that, let's talk about today's sponsor.
Today's sponsor and the lessons brought to you by life insurance.
Life insurance. Pay it, because you will die.
Today's lesson's kind of sad. It's
Yes.
kind of depressing. Not going to
Yes.
lie.
Yes.
Giving you that
Just that heads up.
heads up.
All right.
So, yeah, what are they going to learn about today?
By the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to explain the factors that account for contemporary and historical trends in population growth and decline. What does that mean? It means you're going to understand how population pyramids have changed over time. Like, why did America's population pyramid look like this in 1950? How did it come to be this in 2023? And how will we get to this in 2100? We're going to understand that.
You ready for this?
Yes.
1950, World War II.
Yes, it's why we have all these people who are just born.
2023, baby boom.
Yeah.
2100, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
It's a long time away from there.
Yes. Hey, crude birth rates, or CBR. You're going to see a lot of acronyms in this class. Hey, CBR, the number of babies that are born divided by 1,000. So you take the number of babies that were born the entire year, divide that by 1,000. Okay. So for America, it's 11.4. Okay. In Mexico, 17.3. And in Congo, it's 40.
40.
So you might be wondering, okay, why are they different numbers? Okay, the reason why has to do with economics. Like, do you have the capacity to have kids? It could also be what kind of job you have. If you're an agricultural society, you're going to see a higher birth rate because they're going to need kids to start working in the farms earlier. Generally, as countries get more developed, your birth rate goes down.
Another thing, too, is if you look at the country's stance on women's rights.
Yes.
Women's rights, if a country has more favorable policies towards women's rights, birth rates are going to be a lot lower than, let's say, a country that doesn't.
The more women you see being educated in college, the more you see working in the government, you'll also see a lower birth rate.
That's right.
Okay.
It's death rate, the crude death rate, CDR.
Yeah. It's the number of deaths divided by 1,000. So same concept as the CBR, but you're looking at deaths. Okay, now this is where things get interesting because you would think, oh, America, we're such a developed country, we're going to have a low death rate. Nah, it's actually backwards. The more developed you are, the higher your death rate. You might be wondering why.
More old people.
We have more old people. Old people generally die.
Life insurance.
They have life. That's why they have life insurance. Old people, if you have a country where 2/5 of the country is elderly, and then you have a country where 1/5 of the population is elderly, you're more likely to have more dead old people because old people die.
The other is going to be in more developed countries, you'll have more instances of heart disease.
Yes.
And younger people, cancer.
Yes.
And other forms of death that are typically not seen in these developing countries.
Yes. Okay. And we can also see this on the map. The countries that are orange have a high death rate. Now, notice it's not uniform here because we do have some the developed countries that are shown up here with high death rates, like America, Germany, United Kingdom, but you also have some in Africa. These countries in particular are not doing well on the development scale, but they still do have a high death rate. That is due to disease, malnutrition, violence. So it could be a number of factors. But generally, if a country has a high death rate and it's considered a peaceful place, it's due to the number of elderly people. Okay, natural increase rate. So this is a concept that my students struggle with every year. Natural increase rate, it's just basic math, guys. You take the birth number, the birth rate, take away the number of people that died, and whatever number you're left with is the number of people that have grown in your country. I mean, like or shrunk.
Or shrunk.
How has your population changed? Generally, birth rates are higher than death rates. Okay. Now, people look at this number because it helps us understand how fast the population is growing. United States, we're a 4.3. We have a slow growth, but it's still positive. You don't want to have too rapid of a growth. You want to have a moderately slow growth. Okay. Mexico is a 13. It's higher than America, but it's not bad compared to some other countries. Congo is 24, so it's almost doubled Mexico. Okay, now let's look at Russia. Russia's a negative 2.5, and it's not because of them getting it handed to them in Ukraine, but it's it's that they have such a high elderly population and not enough people being born. So the population pyramid actually looks like a V. You have, instead of a wide base of young people, they have a really tall amount of old people.
And now, since Mr. Latimer brought it up,
Yeah.
the war.
Yes.
As more Russian soldiers are dying.
Yeah. They already have a small young population anyway.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
That they're thinking that by 2050, 2075, it's going to be a lot worse in Russia than it is now.
Yeah, because you're not going to have any working age people to handle anything. So the elderly people are going to starve and die, and then Russia might not even be a country anymore. Well, who knows? We'll see.
We'll have to see.
Hey, infant mortality rate, or IMR. This is the number of babies that die before they turn 1. Okay, mortality means death. Okay, I know people get confused. They see mortality, they think mortal, they think alive, but that's not the case.
No.
It's the babies dying, how many? Okay, that's what infant mortality rate means. So how does this help us understand the development of a country?
If more babies are dying, then they don't have the technological resources needed in order to sustain baby development.
Yes,
I guess.
exactly.
Right? So your least developed countries are going to have a higher infant mortality rate than your developed countries.
Exactly. And countries try to combat this not by fixing their medical infrastructure, but they combat it by having more kids, which just is basically throwing fuel on the fire. It's like, okay, these babies aren't surviving. Let's keep having lots of kids.
Hence why they have a higher birth rate.
Yeah, the birth rate's high, the mortality rate's high. So that's the problem. Okay, total fertility rate. All right, this is different from birth rate. Okay, total fertility rate looks at the number of children divided by the number of women. Another way of understanding what that means, it's the average number of children each woman is likely to have in her lifetime. It's the average number. Okay, that means you can have people with higher numbers than this or less numbers. In less developed countries, on average, women have high total fertility rates. Women are having lots of kids. Why? Like we already talked about, there's a high infant mortality rate. Women are assuming that their kids are probably going to die. They need some kids to survive because if you're in a less developed country, you are probably a farmer and you need your kids to help you farm so you can feed yourself and sell the crops to make money. So families are combating their high infant mortality rates by just having as many kids as possible. I like to say they have replacements. No parent is ever going to think that about their kid, but that's generally what it is. Yeah,
it's a replacement.
Yeah, less developed countries are farming based. We talked about that. Less developed countries lack birth control or family planning. Family planning is a nice way of saying birth control. It's just saying you're considering not producing as many kids as possible.
And I'm going to use the point again. Again, countries that have lower rates of women empowerment is going to have a higher total fertility rate.
Yes.
Okay. Countries that have more
describe it.
Yeah, I just went blank. Countries that have more, I guess, I don't want to say the word liberal, but more inclusive, wanting more rights for women going to college, women going to work in the government, women being elected to government. Your total fertility rates are going to be a lot lower.
Yeah, okay. Which is what you want. And you can also hand out birth control, which some countries are doing. We're trying to help other countries lower their fertility rates, because if you have a fertility rate that's too high, development will be slower because the focus will be on keeping people alive, not fixing future problems. So by giving out birth control or encouraging family planning, you can start to help a country develop faster. Okay, here's a map of the world showing you total fertility rates. The blue, green indicate high. The Yellow, the orange and yellow are lower. Okay. So what this, you can see a relationship here between the development and your fertility rate. Africa is the least developed region in the world, and it is matched with a high fertility rate. So generally, the lower developed you are, less developed you are, the higher your fertility rate will be. Okay, that's called an inverse relationship, when something high matches up with something low. Okay. Okay, replacement rate. Okay.
So replacement rate is, in order for a country to keep its population the same size, the total fertility rate, there's a magic number, and it needs to be 2.1. Okay. The total fertility rate must be 2.1 babies per woman in her lifetime. Okay. This is known as zero population growth, ZPG.
Yeah.
I'm really getting tired of these acronyms.
Yes.
Anything above or below 2.1 will change the size of the population. If it is below 2.1, your population will start dwindling. If it's above, it will grow too fast. So if you look at these population pyramids here, rapid growth, again, if a country looks like an actual pyramid, it's rapid growth, more likely going to be a developing country.
Yes.
Slow growth, zero growth, and even probably negative growth are going to be your developed countries.
Yes.
We're going to talk about transition. There's something called a demographic transition model, and there are different types of stages. I think it's the next lesson.
Yes.
But I bring it up now because it shows that there are specific stages, and every single country has a specific stage of where they are in relation to what their population is, and where they are when it comes to the demographics. So countries that are more rapid growth, again, are going to be countries that are developing. Okay, maybe women are not as empowered, more agrarian or farmers, and not too much industry happening.
Yeah.
Whereas the other countries, you're going to have more so. Right. Now, Russia, they should be doing about what, negative growth now?
Yeah, they're entering this stage.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very sad. All right, next slide.
Okay.
Make sure we got it. Oh, yeah, we skipped one. Oh, we skipped a few. Okay,
Doubling
time. Okay, this is a really easy concept. This is the amount of time it takes for your population to double.
Yes.
Okay, the less developed countries are going to have a shorter doubling time because the majority of their population is young. They're all in their teens and 20s. This is going to seem like a weird idea, but if you have a country where the majority of the population is under the age of 15, it's going to have a fast doubling time, a fast growing time. Usually when we think under 15, we think people who can't have kids. It's not really the point. It's just saying the majority of the population is young. And generally young people are the ones who are having kids. You stop having kids around 40. Doesn't mean you can't. It's difficult. If the majority of your population is in childbearing age. So childbearing age is about basically here where I pointed. Okay, you're going to have like 20 up. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, you can have kids younger than 20, but don't, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and you can also, no one's going to make you do this math, at least I hope. Okay, but that's what doubling time would look like.
Wow.
Yeah.
Math.
Yeah. Okay, development and population changes. The more developed countries, you might see that written as MDCs because AP Geography loves its acronyms. They will have a low growing or even a shrinking population. Why? The cost of living is high. We've talked about this. Germany and Japan, especially, they're very developed countries, and they have a low growing population. Actually, you could say shrinking population, especially Japan. This makes it hard for people to afford kids. If cost of living is high, like just rent, gas, food, if there's too much, just costs too much, there's no way we can add on another kid. Kids are expected to survive childhood. If every parent just wants to have a kid, they can have a single kid. But that's not going to help the population. Each couple needs to have 2 kids if they want the population to stay the same, like we talked about, that magical 2.1 number. That means every 10th woman has 3 kids. And so because they assume kids are going to survive childhood, they're not going to have 2, especially if you factor in the cost of living being high. Everyone wants to have a kid because they get to have that experience. Oh, I threw the ball and all that fun stuff. But you don't want to have multiple kids because there's no need to have spares. You just need the one kid.
Spares. God.
I know.
All right.
So we can see that in America too. When I grew up, they would say it said all the time that the average American family is 2.5 kids, which meant like
2.5 kids.
Yeah, 2.5 kids. Or it's like every family had 2 or 3 kids, and that was common. I had a brother and a sister. A lot of my friends have 2 kids, not 2 siblings. So 3-kid households were very common in the 90s. But now we're seeing the millennials having kids, having 1 kid, or maybe no kids.
No kids.
Yeah. Okay, and that's just a lot of them want kids. It's just the cost of living is too high. Life expectancy is also part of it. If the average person lives to be 90, there's no need to have all these extra people around. Okay, because things are getting crowded. It's overpopulation. And when you have a society where everyone's dead by 40, sure, keep hopping out kids. Just keep having kids. Like, we need them apparently. But if we have a large elderly population, it kind of already makes things hard as well, trying to find room for these more kids to be born. Okay, question for you. Why does America still have a growing population despite its high level of development? Immigration. America is built off of immigrants. That's how we became what we are, like through our waves of immigration. And immigrants typically have more kids than people who've been more rooted in the country. Okay, less developed countries and population changes. Many less developed countries, such as in South Africa and North Africa, have seen changes to their populations due to improvements in nutrition, healthcare, and sanitation. This impacted their population by increasing their life expectancy, decreasing birth rates, and decreasing the death rates. However, their populations are still growing quickly. Why do you think that is?
Well, these are going to still be least developed countries.
Yes. Right? Well, they're developing.
Excuse me.
Yeah, they're not the bottom tier. They're mid tier now.
So probably something along the lines of you still have high birth rates.
Yes, because all we're seeing is the death rates are dropping off.
Yes.
So people are still having like 6 kids per family. They're just not dying.
Like the Congo. Right?
Yeah, the Congo. Okay. There are people that medicine has made it so they're not dying. Okay, and here's our last slide for y'all. This is a map of countries showing their development. It's called HDI, which we'll learn about at the end of the year. The blue countries are the highest developed. The green are kind of mid-tier. And then you get to red, which are your lower-tiered countries in terms of development. So how do we measure development? We look at how long are people living. That's part of it. Well, the 3 things really. It's wealth, life expectancy, years of schooling. Okay. If your country excels at all 3 of those, then you're going to be in the blue. If your country doesn't, you're going to be in the red. Okay. So everything we talk about in geography reflects back to development.
Development.
Yes. All right, y'all. That's it for today's lesson. We'll catch y'all next time.